everybody, and welcome to this week's 9/11 Chronicles. I'm in the cottage today, having just helped to plaster walls with an ecological earth, basically mud. So I'm kind of a mess today, but anyway, that's pretty typical. I kind of do these on the fly, I have to say. So this week I thought I would talk about the 1-year anniversary, which of course was completely loaded, as you can imagine. We were invited down to Ground Zero. I wound up going with Aaron's mom, Selena, as my family sort of found other things to do. I don't know, it was just such a loaded time. We went down the night before, having been invited by the Canadian Consulate. There was a reception held for some of the victims who were coming for the anniversary, and it was like a drinks reception, and there were people there from the Ontario Victims of Crime who were quite instrumental in helping us through that first year. We spent the night in New York in a hotel, and the next morning went down to what was now sort of referred to as the pit, I guess, which was sort of the basin of the cleared out, I can't remember now if it was the North Tower or the South Tower, one of the towers. They had allowed 10 family members for every victim to come. And so I was a little nervous about the crowds because I'd already sort of experienced a memorial down kind of at Ground Zero that was really, I don't know, it's just made me nervous, a huge congregation of people all in one place. We get there, and sure enough, tons and tons of people. And my first thought was, oh my God, we didn't do the t-shirt. It just never occurred to me. There were just entire groups of people walking around with an image of their dead loved one on a t-shirt. And entire families were sporting these t-shirts. And it was just nothing that had ever entered my mind that was something that you might do. Then my second thought was, I was surprised at actually how many kids were there, and really little kids. And I kind of was a little taken aback because there was like a huge bandstand set up for all the media, just wires going everywhere. It was just like, it was crazy, all kinds of cameras. And I was doing my best to avoid being sort of focused upon, I guess. I don't know what you call that. But there were moms up there, with their kids all decked out in the t-shirt and little red, white, and blue scarves, and posing their kids pretty much in front of this bandstand of cameras. And I was so taken aback by that. I just thought, what is this? Like, is this some sort of exploitation? Is this what is the goal that I'm not understanding? So that was sort of interesting. And so anyway, they start reading the names, and we were all invited to volunteer to read names. I just opted not to because, I don't know, just didn't want to be, I didn't want to be in front of a ton of people. So we waited impatiently for Aaron's name. So Aaron's full name was Caleb Aaron Dack, D-A-C-K. And so we get to the D's finally, and this young man gets up and he reads Caleb Aaron Black. And my first thought again is just like, buddy, we're the D's, not B's. Why are you saying black? Like, what? And Selena beside me was just spitting swear words, I guess is what you'd say. So that was kind of another moment that sort of stands out. And then we were all sort of given a rose and ushered into this pit, which I felt like a sheep sort of being, corralled into this, like, basically what felt like a trap. It's like, okay, go down into this pit, good luck getting out. And then we were all sort of laying these roses down into this big pile of roses, which, again, just seemed sort of strange. Yeah, it was also unprecedented. Like, there was nothing like this had ever happened before. So I think people just didn't really know what the protocols were and what the traditions should be and all that kind of thing. Anyway, we got up. We somehow managed to get out of the pit. One of the first things I saw as we came out of the pit were some Canadian mounted police, and I felt like, oh, okay, a little bit of home, a little bit of something recognizable, but also just like so kind of incongruous with what was going on. So it was kind of hard to sort of figure out what that was all about. So then we were invited after that to a reception. Again, it was at the Canadian Consulate. So again, I was meeting a lot of the Canadian families. And, one of the widows came up to me and told me that part of her husband's body had been found. It was like, But, it was sort of nice to see this group of people at the same time because, there was sort of nobody else that could really understand what we had been going through. So it was nice to be with people that you didn't really have to explain anything to, and that felt comfortable enough to tell you that about part of their husband's body had been found. We're sort of down in this, again, same sort of area where we had met the Prime Minister before. And so the Prime Minister gets up and, sort of going on about how it's, the 1-year anniversary and now it's time to move on. And we're like, and Selena just, lost her shit, basically. Just couldn't believe that she was being told it was time to move on, 1-year anniversary and that's that, right? Like, okay, done. I had mixed feelings because I kind of there's a part of me that kind of wanted to move on. Like I was starting to feel really tired of, all this grieving. So there was a part of me that wanted to move on, but then there's this weird kind of sort of oxymoron that happens where you want to move on, but then you're so afraid of like that you're going to forget your person if you move on, and that's not going to be okay, and that that you're dishonoring them if you move on, and it's just such a complicated emotion that goes through your mind, And so on one hand, with his speech, I was like, yay, I get to move on now, like, and on the other hand, I was like, wait a minute, I'm not ready to move on. Like, I don't want to forget him. I don't want, like, and what does that mean? And what's interesting is that in sort of the grand grief world, you kind of get a year, and then people expect you to move on. Like you're supposed to be over it in a year, and a lot of widowed people say the second year is actually the hardest because their support system disappears, because people kind of think, all right, she's had a year, she should be over it by now, and it's just not the case, and it's just so it's a really difficult thing to overcome and to kind of come back from. So yeah, moving on. It's a thing, and it's not a thing. You never move on. I'm here 24 years and it's still there. So you don't move on, even if you've got the Prime Minister of Canada telling you that it's time.